Hey folks, what happened to vintage Nerf? I keep looking everywhere, but I can't find it. And if your response to that is, well, it's probably back in the 1980s, where it belongs, that's not what I mean. What I mean is Nerf keeps nostalgia baiting, and I'm gonna use vintage and retro interchangeably here. If you have a strong opinion towards one or the other, I apologize, but for Nerf's short history, I think we can kind of use those in the same way. Let me just make it very clear then that my opinion on retro Nerf is very, very high. Every year, people's opinions on what is retro or iconic or vintage will in fact change. The 90s toy aesthetic, for example, is very unique, and Nerf knows that their vintage color scheme and even just the logo is invaluable. That's why it keeps popping up in seemingly random collaborations, clothing, accessories, video game skins. But for actual Nerf enthusiasts, the promise of bringing back the classics hasn't quite landed. And let me make this very clear. I'm willing to buy it. And I know some other people are willing to buy it too. We know that nostalgia sells, as I will happily admit. Today, let's talk about 3 examples of where Nerf has tried to nostalgia bait and failed. Failed to continue the lines, failed to continue interest, failed to maybe even grasp the idea, really lost the plot before it got going. Videos like these are made possible thanks to my channel members. If you want to go above and beyond in supporting the channel and get some exclusive behind-the-scenes looks and videos, let's talk a little bit about Siren Blasters. Consider joining the Bert Troopers. And if not, your continued viewership and comments are always greatly appreciated. And let's start with probably the most obvious that is sitting right behind me. On September 9th, 2022 at Nerf Fest, which premiered on YouTube, the Nerf Sharp 92 was introduced.
We heard you loud and clear that you wanted us to bring back some classic Nerf items and blasters.
The Sharp 92.
A return to the classics, the first Nerf blaster to ever fire foam darts. The 1992 Nerf Sharpshooter, but remastered. Now you could fire modern day Nerf Mega darts instead of the old school vintage Megas, which were a different diameter.
We're reproducing this awesome artwork from the 90s. Neon, it's great, matches that 90s vibe of Nerf that you remember and love.
Hey yo, what the?
And if you were super excited, there was merch that came along with it. Pre-orders through Hasbro Pulse, shipping in 2023, 30 United States dollars. Almost immediately upon announcement, the Nerf Sharp 92 received some mixed feedback. The price tag most specifically. $30 for a single shot blaster? It wasn't really shown that it was going to be on store shelves. It kind of just seemed like it was going to be a Hasbro Pulse exclusive, not a Nerf limited exclusive, but on the same site where you can buy those. Whatever. But this wasn't going to be something you compared to your average Nerf blaster on store shelves. This was, again, very much targeted at people like myself or people who have been interested in Nerf from an early age or liked the idea of a classic, iconic Nerf blaster, but now you can get it.
When you think about Nerf, you think about nostalgia.
And I eventually did. As promised, it did take a minute for people to receive their pre-orders, but once they were delivered, I think the reception was overall as expected. The functionality of the Sharp 92 is the exact same as the original Sharpshooter, pretty obvious. Pull back, load your dart in the front, and fire. It's stuck to the wall. Suction cup darts are just so much better. See, this is the nostalgia I like. Bring back suction cup darts. Now, the stock performance of the Sharp 92 is nothing to write home about. I found about 50 to 60 FPS depending on the darts you're using, be that regular Mega darts or the Mega Accu Fakes, Mega Accu Strike. Gosh, I get those mixed up every time I think about them out loud. The included suction cup Mega darts have a pretty good fit, so they actually perform pretty well. No. And as advertised, the Sharp 92 is a pretty good remake of the original Sharpshooter, right down to the really tiny, almost non-existent grip. This is the one area that I gotta say, maybe they shouldn't have remade it exactly as it was originally manufactured, because this grip, I'm usually not one to complain about grip size, but wow, whoa. The pullback handle is totally fine, but yeah, that grip is just like, oh man, that's rough. Otherwise, the colors look pretty good. You got paint on both sides for that Nerf logo. No complaints there. But it's pretty clear that this is meant for a nostalgic audience because the box is also part of your purchase. Usually you would discard this almost immediately, but I would imagine that a lot of people are going to leave it in package because it's just so nicely presented. You can actually basically put this back together as long as you cut the tape, and you could basically put your blaster right back inside and keep it as a display piece if you really wanted to. And the little sleeve at the bottom will give it some extra protection. Flashing sticker warning, 3, 2, 1. Look at that. That's kind of cool. There's some cool designs on that. I like that they included that. They didn't have to, but they did. Here's one that's actually still in box and hasn't been used in a game, and I think it's totally fine to expect that a lot of these blasters will stay like this, as a cool display piece, as a collector's item, because I think it is worth collecting. And the other important piece of this is that these blasters showed up on Walmart.com for $20. Now, I don't know if that was the ultimate plan, and I don't know if that means that they had more left over than they actually intended to sell, or if it was always their intent to try and get it into more stores. Again, I don't think they intend to sell them on store shelves, and if you've seen them in your area, then that's the first I've heard of it. But on Walmart.com, you can buy these for $10 less than the original retail price. This appeals to a certain audience, and I think overall, they did a good job. A good mix, a good balance of let's do the exact same thing but update it just a little bit and give you a nice overall package that is also recreated. So the Sharp 92, not too bad. What's next? Nothing. This is the problem with the Nerf Sharp 92. Not the Sharp 92. The fact that the Sharp 92 was kind of pitched as the first of its kind. The first in the effort to re-release old vintage blasters that we know you love.
What could we bring back? There's so many incredible options, so many that I know you guys are excited about and that we're excited about.
What do you mean by that?
Well, where the heck are they? How long is that pipeline? I can't see. I obviously don't know all the fine details behind the product development at Nerf, but what really seemed odd about Nerf Fest in general was that they were pitching that there were going to be some new hot releases, and the Sharp 92 was again poised as like the start of something big. For those nostalgia fans, those retro Nerf enthusiasts, this is something to pay attention to. And it was a great way to get people interested. It certainly got people paying attention because it got people thinking about what would come next. The 95 crossbow was obviously on people's mind. It was on their mind maybe to be the first blaster release, but the Sharp 92 proved that they could actually do it. And if the only reason to not release more retro iconic blasters, especially from like the 90s, was that it didn't sell well. Okay, so you're just gonna make one blaster, like years later you're gonna release it, and then when it doesn't do well, you had nothing else in the works? I'm a little suspicious about that. I mean, if this was a passion project for someone, like someone just happened to get this through, then that's great. Or they just had to roll the dice and choose one blaster. It just really felt like Nerf was finally taking a look at their old blasters, and they were seeing the interest, the popularity of that style that they keep putting on a bunch of random merchandise, and they were like, oh yeah, well, we could re-release the old stuff and see how that does. I just don't believe that one blaster failed so hard that they wouldn't re-release more or not have at least one more in the pipeline. But maybe I'm wrong. For some people, the 1992 sharpshooter is iconic. But is it icon line iconic? Is anything icon line iconic? Yes, in 2019, the icon line hit the scene. If you were around during that time, you know how strange the icon line was. It felt like it was kind of done in tandem with the 50th anniversary of Nerf. So the icon line released 5 blasters. Ooh, more than one. Wow. This is again why it's so surprising that they would start a whole new line of seemingly iconic stuff and only do one for the Sharp 92. But anyways, the icon line promised to bring back some iconic blasters, but this time we're not going back to the 90s. We're going back to N-Strike. And for a lot of people, like modern day interested kids and adults, young adults, the N-Strike line is pretty relevant. It's something that they can in fact remember, and it might actually be iconic to them at this point. Even the Nerf darts had little icon logos on them showing how special and fancy these blasters were going to be. They're going to be remakes of your favorite tried and true iconic blasters, and you have the chance to purchase them again because these blasters aren't being sold in stores anymore. So, okay, thought experiment. What are some iconic N-Strike blasters then? What's the most iconic Maverick? It's the Maverick. The Nerf Maverick is the most iconic blaster of basically all time. We can debate this all we want, right? But the Maverick has shown up in so much stuff. It is obvious that this is the iconic blaster. What's another one? The Longshot. The Longshot's another one that's been done, you know, things that have been made super small, super big, the things that show up in weird collaborations, little tiny world's smallest Nerf blasters, the Longshot. And I'll choose one more, the Night Finder. Pull back, load a dart, fire, you got a little light on the front, dart holder, another just very common blaster you could find in stores for an affordable price, little rail on the top. It was very popular as I would understand it. So roll call please for the 5 icon blasters. The Nerf Stampede. Okay, I guess that does make some sense. The Nerf Longshot. Longshot, there you go. The Nerf Mag Strike. Mag Strike, I guess, like that was more of a dart tag one first, but sure. The Nerf Spectre. Spectre? Wait, what? And the Nerf Element. The Element? What? Hello? Wait a minute, what is happening here? These are our 5 icon blasters, and yes, spoiler alert, that's it. The icon line, so iconic for 1 year, 1 summer, right? Because it didn't really last beyond any more releases that were all condensed in the summer of 2019. Again, I can understand a couple of those, but are you seriously saying that the Spectre made more sense than the Maverick and the Element made more sense than the Nightfinder? I know those two are basically the exact same, but like, it's the principle of it. I'm getting upset. Now maybe it really was as simple of they had these molds on hand and so they just kept making those blasters. It was easier, it was more cost effective. That's probably the only thing that mattered. And I know the Maverick is not the most powerful blaster of all time and it has its faults and it has its problems, but it's iconic. You can't make a line called Icon and not have the Nerf Maverick. That's the reason that someone made this one into an Icon Maverick. That's the reason that we have the Bert Icon Maverick. Ugh. Unsurprisingly, the Nerf Icon line was met with some mixed feelings. Sure, for the most part, the blasters did function and fire as advertised. I think the prices were basically the exact same or slightly increased to make up for their long hiatus from store shelves. And in some cases, including Elite Darts, was actually a step up in performance or at least compatibility, so you know, that's somewhat of a win, I guess. Though ironically, one of the most controversial in the line was the Longshot, the one that was arguably the most iconic to still be re-released because the plunger tube volume had been decreased. That's not how you update for modern times. You don't go down. Longshot too powerful, please nerf. Also, the Icon Longshot didn't have the little Icon logo on the front barrel, so if you did remove that piece, it just looked like the standard yellow Longshot. Actually, I don't know. Did people want the Icon logo on the blaster? Was that actually significant enough, or did they just want a re-release of the old blaster? This is kind of where the Icon line didn't have the best identity, whereas something like the remake of the Nerf Sharpshooter, it made sense of what they were trying to do. The Icon line was just like, it's gonna be all in yellow again. We're not sure if we're trying to make remakes or we're just trying to re-release, but we'll put a little logo on it. It really did just feel like that was released to coincide with the 50th anniversary of Nerf, and that was that. Which, if that was the case, just call it that then. Don't tease us with a re-release of iconic blasters, just call it the 50th anniversary celebration sale or something. If you want to re-release something and call it our 50th Nerf release bonanza or our 10-year re-release of the Stryfe, you can do that. Just make sure it's pretty clear that that's what you're doing. Hey, look, it's the third example. That's right, coming in at our third example of nostalgia baiting, kinda, sort of, close enough, the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. Now, I'm well aware that the Nerf Pro Stryfe X was tied to Nerf Ball and the, announcement of Nerf Pro officially for darts and whatnot that's kind of its own thing. The release, though, of the Stryfe X name, function, a whole blaster was enough to get people talking. Bazinga, here it is with a few little add-ons and attachments, but it's basically in stock form. The Nerf Pro Stryfe X is something that I do enjoy using. I think as long as your battery doesn't die, why are they not selling separate batteries for this? Oh wait, they don't care. This blaster is a pretty good performer and pretty fun to use. It is in fact a Stryfe, unapologetically so, and I think that's something they did well. They touted this blaster as not just like a start for the Nerf Pro scene, but as something that would honor the Stryfe. It's the 10-year re-release of the Stryfe, but updated to some modern performance. Now we can debate, and probably people will debate, about how well they updated it to modern times. They sure got the pricing right for modern times, ooh-wee. But they weren't trying to hide what this was. They didn't give it some weird name like, oh, this is the Nerf Stryfe-Eiffel. No, it's the Stryfe X, the X stands for 10. Wait a minute, could that mean that other blasters are gonna get the Pro X treatment? 10 years later, we're gonna see another re-release of a blaster but updated for pro performance? And obviously the color scheme being somewhat new was also something that people were starting to hypothesize, like, oh, what if this blaster was in that color scheme? What if this blaster would work too? Oh wait, The darts that came with the Stryfe X and those magazines, I don't know if they're gonna work in anything other than a flywheel. Well, we got that answer later with the next Nerf Pro blasters. In some ways, the Sender and Torrent kind of showed that Nerf Pro wasn't going in the direction of re-releasing blasters, but also by introducing new Nerf Pro darts, it opened up the possibility of more blasters that are springers to be re-released in the Nerf Pro line. More blasters that originally took full-length magazines could now take half-length magazines that Nerf could release. We had no idea. Nerf Pro Deploy! Snubbed on the Icon line, snubbed on the Pro X line, the Deploy. Now I know some people were disillusioned to the Stryfe X simply because of the price, or the proprietary battery, or lazy remake, not interested, but they were still curious if this meant that something more might come in the Pro line that centered around remakes. Because, you know, okay, you might be lazy, but could you be lazy for the Rapid Strike as well? I wouldn't mind a full auto Pro Blaster from you guys. Let me see what you keep doing with that one. So there was some skepticism, but there was a curiosity as well. And given everything that Nerf's done, we had no idea if this was the start of more to come, or if it really was just kind of a one-off. Based on everything we've seen, I think the Stryfe X was intended to be a one-off, that being they weren't going to remake a bunch of other blasters with the Dash X and put it in the Pro line. I think that the Stryfe just lends itself to be a really easy, simple flywheel platform that they were able to cobble something together. It was proven they were able to cobble stuff together using mod parts and then slightly tweak it and make it their own. Again, we can debate some of those nitty-gritty details and the ethics. It did leave room for some speculation, but I do think it wasn't their intent to have this start a grand future, and the reason it didn't was because, like, poor sales. I think it really just was meant to be a one and done. Though maybe we'll get a 20-year anniversary Stryfe one day and it'll fire 300 FPS. It was still a fun thought to entertain. Like I said before, nostalgia sells. One of the reasons I'm definitely still interested in Nerf is because of the crazy colors and the stylings that Nerf pioneered many years ago. Bye, Nerf man. And years later, we can rediscover old stuff that they did and be like, dang, that's really cool. And it makes you sad that they're not re-releasing new stuff in that vein, whether it's weird Nerf tie-ins or old school blasters, even if they're not pro-level performance. There's something nostalgic, cool retro style, unique and special that makes it always the more appealing to look back on the good old days. Man, what has happened nowadays? As always, I'm being a bit dramatic, but I do genuinely wish that Nerf would find their footing on bringing old school blasters onto modern day shelving, even if it's just online. Options that people can buy stuff that they never had a chance to years and years ago, even if that means slight tweaks to make it compatible with new school darts or new school regulations. I get that that's a huge factor too. They have been slightly touching on those aspects with like N-series stylings and colors. Like, they know that leaning into colorful blasters is good for toy safety regulations. So like vintage blasters should fall into that consideration, right? Just from a safety perspective. Or I'm just huffing copium and wishful thinking is being spoken out loud. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, from the shortcomings of the Sharp 92 to the major shortcomings and what of the Icon line to the questions posed by the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. Any and all thoughts, nostalgia related, I'd love to see those in the comment section down below. Can we get a shout out for old school retro shirt still that I have, because this is awesome? Can we bring back our Super Maxes? People know what they are, right? They better. Subscribe for more iconic vintage retro blasters, and I will see you later.
When you think about Nerf, you know, you think about Vortex. You wanted us to bring back Vortex.